Right, here
The
we go.
broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Market Validation, Justifying the Decision to Start a New Venture. This is part of the University Startup Development webinar series. So before we begin, I'd like to let everyone know that we are doing this webinar as part of a full series. So 3 more upcoming webinars are coming up on September 20th. We have a webinar on collaborating with corporate partners on October 25. We have another webinar on Fortune 500s, how they think about partnering with startups, and on November 8th about term sheets. So if you'd like to know more about upcoming webinars, all you need to do is go to our website and you should be able to see the upcoming webinars in this series, how to register, as well as archives of this webinar. At the end of this session, we will have a Q&A portion. So I do recommend that you type in your questions today by going to the webinar control panel on the right side of your screen and just type in the questions in the questions box that is provided to you. This webinar is being recorded, so as soon as we have the recording up, you will receive you will receive an email from us informing you where to find the slides and the video. They're usually available 24 to 48 hours after the webinar concludes. Now, if you would like to view more webinars in this series, as well as webinars that we've done in the past, go to ncet2.org/YouTube and you should be able to see what we've done before. Today's webinar agenda, we'll talk about this series and what it's about, as well as we'll give you a quick background as to what the webinar series talks about, like the startup development program, what's it about, and how universities, researchers, as well as corporations, how you could benefit from this program. Then we'll go to our third item in the agenda, which is the meat of this webinar on market validation, how to justify the decision to start a new venture. Then our fourth item in the agenda is Q&A. So before we start today's session, as you know, this webinar is part of a series, as I mentioned earlier. So if you're part of a university or a researcher or an entrepreneur, I do recommend that you invite your colleagues to join this webinar series as well. You can just go to our website and you can register for this series here. As I mentioned, we are scheduling more sessions. So for September 20th, we have collaborating with corporate partners, Fortune 500s. And as soon as we confirm more sessions, the schedule will be updated. For our completed webinars, you can actually also go to this page and view the archives. So the slides and the videos are available in this page. So if you're registered for this series, you will definitely receive an email from us. And we do encourage people to invite their colleagues to join and to take advantage of learning more from the topics in this webinar. All right, so I'll move on now to our topic for today, which is market validation, justifying the decision to start a new venture. And today we have 2 speakers. NCET2's Executive Director will start off today's lecture with a background on the Startup Development Program and how universities and researchers and faculty can benefit from our program. And followed immediately by Adam Greenspan. He's an NCET2 Startup Development Officer, and he's also a former Director of Business Incubation for the University City Science Center. So without further ado, I'll turn it over now to Tony to give us a background on the program.
Okay, thank you so much, Ria. Welcome, everyone. All right, so for those that have attended prior sessions, you know that our commercialization model comes from a congressional ask a couple of years ago, where they were looking to have some new ideas on how to commercialize the $137 billion of annual R&D at universities and federal labs. And so our corporate members put together a model over 2015 that we then briefed Congress on 2016, and then we started to implement some of the parts. Excuse me. So we had the demo day, and then we, second demo day, and now we're into the IP to Startup program and also the development program with the startup development officers. All right, next slide. So the model is really to move technologies out of the labs to the market, either an IPO or a business unit exit. And you can kind of see the complexity of the model here. Mostly what is important is just to find these research entrepreneurs that can help move the technology that's really science-based to, programs where startups could get created and market aligned with corporate input, and then get funding either from the government or private sources. All right, next slide. So the startup program is really a great opportunity for researchers and entrepreneurs, faculty, students to build a university startup around IP. So Congress funds $137 billion. There's literally about 20 years worth of backlog in the lab. So there's trillions of dollars of just great ideas that will have huge impacts on the world if they can just get developed. So that's what this is about. So we help you with our Fortune 500 members and our startup development officers, but your universities also have programs that could kind of set you on the path, and we work with most universities across the country to supplement their programs and provide the market alignment. All right, next. So the development program really involves our startup development officers like Adam, who's speaking today. He's a serial entrepreneur, has a lot of experience in this area, a lot of knowledge, worked at the Philadelphia Science Center, helping startups there, and along with his personal experience in startups. So we have a lot of people like that. They're either serial entrepreneurs like Adam, angel investors that have a lot of experience in funding startups, or ex-corporates that have a lot of experience in, scaling and working with the corporates and regulatory compliance and, a lot of those higher level issues. You can find the list, our current list. We're adding. This is a new program. I think we're about 15 or so, but we're adding more, every week as we talk to them. It's not easy to become an SDO. So if you're on the call and you're interested in being an SDO, just drop us a line. Right now, we're accepting about half the people or less that are applying, but to keep up the standards. But it's a great program if you're interested in being an SDO. All right, next slide. And it's a great program because you get to work with students and researchers, faculty, entrepreneurs around universities. Basically, the services are to do the business plan with the management teams, proof of concept, prototyping, early product development, and then get angel, VC, and SBIR funding for the companies. You can look at these as experiments, commercialization experiments, and basically, if you're a researcher looking to work with Fortune 500 or angels and VCs, this is a great way to get into the community by helping commercialize your own research at the university, or if you're not a researcher and you don't have research yourself, just head over to your tech transfer office or to either your medical school or engineering school and talk to people there. There's a lot of research that people are working on that they'd like to see moved to the market. All right, next. The benefits, basically it's access to these professional SDO talent to help you create, develop, and fund the startup. And for universities, we help you move your IP to the market with corporate alignment, IPO alignment, and these fantastic startup development officers that are really experienced and high level. And for the graduated students, you get to basically graduated to a startup in most cases, and work with Fortune 500 and the startup development officers. So it's just a great, addition to your resume. A lot of Fortune 500, if you're a researcher, they actually are calling now for researchers that have entrepreneurship experience, and this is just another way to kind of highlight that. All right, next. And if you're interested, if you're a researcher, entrepreneur, or university, and you want to be part of our program, just drop us a line. We'll set up a call with you and see where we could go. All right. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Adam. So Adam, you want to take it here?
Sure. Thanks, Tony and Ria. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for the invitation to speak today. I'm really excited about the SDO program. So I'm honored to be a part of it as it launches, and really look forward to see and being part of the initial group. So when we talk about market validation in a startup, normally we're trying to test hypotheses about market acceptance. It's often used as a tool in developing products and business models. And today I'll touch on that and also apply this thinking to the decision to form a new company. Can I get the next slide, please? Just to start off, here's a snapshot of my background. So like Tony said, I'm one of the startup development officers with NSET2. And previously, I was the director of business incubation at the University City Science Center in Philadelphia. It's a research park with a number of commercialization programs, including a wet lab incubator. And right now, I'm the principal consultant of Bluepoint Innovation, where I provide commercialization consulting to clients, mainly startup companies, entrepreneurs, and inventors. And one of my clients happens to be the University City Science Center. Just started working with them again this week, in fact. And so I'm sorry. Can you go back to the last slide? I'll just quickly run through the rest of my background. So my background really kind of spans three main areas, which is lab research, technology transfer, and entrepreneurship. So I did research at a variety of organizations, both academic and corporate. Started in tech transfer at Hopkins, and then I ran the QED proof of concept program that I just mentioned at the Science Center in Philadelphia, which is has some similarities with some of the activities at NSET2. It's basically like an accelerator program for university life science researchers. And then I actually, as Tony said, I'm a serial entrepreneur. So one of my companies, Aries Medical Textiles, came through NSET2 a couple of years ago, and I ran the incubators at the Science Center. I've gone through training with the Lean Launchpad, and I'm also registered as a patent agent with the U.S. Patent Office. Can we go to the next slide, please? So in general, I would identify four main phases during the technology commercialization process, depending on the nature of the technology. This journey can take up to 15 years and cost over $100 million. Of course, you can incorporate milestones to serve as benchmarks along the way, and actually the commercialization readiness level scheme that Tony and his team at NSET2 have developed they're very useful for taking this stage gate approach. Nonetheless, given the amount of time and money needed for the journey, it's really critical to validate your market as early in the process as you can, so you can justify your investment of time, money, resources, energy, everything. Can we go to the next slide, please? So for the rest of the hour, I'm going to focus on 4 elements of market validation: establishing the value proposition, showing market demand, finding competitive advantages, and then proving funding credibility. The startup development officers through NSET 2, they're going to be invaluable in providing guidance with respect to all of these activities. So we'll get to each one of these, and then I'll share some thoughts on how you can get the information that you need corresponding to each of these elements. And then if we have time, we can go through an example case from my own personal experience that can help illustrate some of these points. Next slide, please. When we talk about the value proposition, it's really the benefit that is being provided to the customer or user, which I normally refer to as a target. So it's a very nuanced topic that gets a lot of attention in the startup and tech community, particularly when you're ready to test the market. For now, I'm going to keep it at a high level, and I'm just going to stick with some basics. Can we get the next slide, please? So first, it's really important to start with the problem. So what is the challenge that you're attempting to solve? Why is it important? And then consider the impact. Who is affected, and to what extent? And is it major? And then finally, offer a solution. What will your product or service entail? Who will it be offered to, and how will they actually use it? So when you can show that your solution effectively addresses the problem, then you will be confident that you have a strong value proposition. All right, next slide, please. So just going a little bit deeper, it's always smart to spend as much time as you can with your target customers, especially early on when you're establishing the value proposition. So a useful exercise is to build a profile of your targets in terms of jobs to be done. So what I would do is to list all the things that they're looking to accomplish with respect to solving the problem that's been identified. There might be a few, or there might just be one. Then learn about what pains them while they are attempting to complete that job, and then what do they wish to gain at the end of the day once the job's been completed. So a useful tool is to develop a questionnaire or a survey, and just to really get out and talk to as many people as possible. I've heard phrases like get out of the building, kind of like which is used in the I-Core activity, and it's spot on. I mean, I've seen recommendations to go out and have 100 interviews, and I definitely think the more people you can talk to, the better that you get to know your market demographic. That will be incredibly useful in tailoring your value proposition accordingly. And I have a reference on here to this business model canvas which is that's a training program that I've used in the past. And they have a couple of guidebooks as well that are pretty useful. Next slide, please. Next is to show evidence of market demand. So here I'm referring to potential customers and users for your envisioned products or services. Next slide. First, you want to look at the competitive landscape. So how is the problem currently being solved? So I would list all the known solutions and also include what I call functional substitutes that might be competing indirectly with your solution. Then get data to determine the market penetration of each, if that's available, from like secondary market research reports and databases, like trade associations, those kind of resources, and then characterize the suitability of those solutions with respect to solving that problem. Then and then conversely, go back to thinking about your target groups, your customers and users, and identify all of the potential target groups that will be benefiting from your solution, and then you'll be able to take your conceptualized solution, and you can vet it with those targets and ensure that it actually is adequate in addressing their needs. So and I've included a couple of indicators here to prove that there is market demand. So to perform a call to action is, I mean, that is usually pretty indicative. So and that would be, I mean, it could just be like having an interview, getting like some expression of interest on collaborating on like an alpha prototype test, something like that. And I mean, those are things that, I mean, you can actually analyze that data and share that as early engagement and traction within your target groups. And then also is if you're able to measure the addressable market and see that actually exceeds what you're seeing with respect to adoption of current solutions, then you'll know that you have a truly unmet market need and that there's a real nice opportunity here. Okay, can I get the next slide, please? So you have a value proposition and some evidence that it's desirable. Now make sure that there's a market opening and find your competitive advantages. Next slide, please. So what are the things that set you apart in the market and give you the ability to compete with others? From an innovation standpoint, it might be cost-driven, where you've solved an economic constraint, or you may differentiate from others via new features and benefits that your product or service would be offering. You could also have a narrow focus and have great appeal to a specific target that you understand clearly. Then there's the intellectual property, which is critical for research-based innovation. You'll want to do a deep dive to identify any patents that might be roadblocks, and then also make sure that your inventions are patentable if they haven't already issued as patents. Now at this point, the startup development officers with NSET 2 will be incredibly valuable. They can certainly help with some of these with some of this analysis, and the ability to recruit a capable business lead is going to be critical. And so most successful entrepreneurs will tell you that one of the first things that they look for is competitive advantage. So that's being able to have management in place that is capable and inspires confidence, both with the internal team as well as prospective partners and investors is key. And the startup development officer themselves may be able to step into this role if all the stars align. All right, next slide, please. lastly, I want to get into the funding. It's rarely a sure thing. So what I suggest is making sure you have a plan for proving the credibility of your fundraising plan. The main thing is that the strategy makes sense. First off, if there is a viable licensing partner, then that deal should probably just proceed. However, it's often the case that the technology is just too early, or it hasn't been sufficiently de-risked, or it's just not in alignment with product lines and interests of prospective licensees that you've identified. So what you want to see in that case is compatibility with funding opportunities and or investor interests. If you can find appropriate grants, then confirm suitability with the program officers. Also get in front of investors and corporate venture teams and get their feedback. And this, sorry, can you skip to the next slide? So yeah, so I'm in the bottom left section here, and so yeah, getting feedback from the marketplace is very helpful, and it's also critical for getting on the path to developing a viable plan. And this is actually another area where NCET2 is extremely valuable. They've enlisted a network of these types of players who they review technologies and they filter them for entry into the program. I've gone through that process myself, and incredibly useful. They'll also give feedback as to what to put in your pitch as specific development milestones or commercialization milestones that would be of interest to them. So if you can put together a plan that then incorporates their feedback, then that will greatly increase your chance of being able to access the funding resources that they would offer. Okay, so now I'll just switch gears and I'll talk about I'll talk through an example using my own experience, and then we can take some questions. So yeah, my company is Aries Medical Textiles. So what we provided was antimicrobial textiles to prevent the spread of infection using a finishing treatment for fabrics in the hospital setting. Next slide, please. And I know we skipped a slide. We'll get back to that at the end. So in terms of establishing the value proposition, so what was the problem? The problem was that bacteria reside on textile surfaces, and that leads to a high incidence of hospital-acquired infection. So what is the impact of that? This is a pain that's obviously felt by patients, but also by healthcare providers, because that certainly interferes with the care that they're able to provide. And then also the payers. I mean, this really does have a negative effect on the system as a whole, and you know a lot of the payers are feeling the effect of that, and the systems, because sometimes they can't recover some of the costs associated with preventable infection. So it's a severe problem, and there's 5% incidence of hospital infection and the typical cost is $15,000 per occurrence. So that multiplies very quickly. So what is the solution? Solution is to pre-treat textiles with this antimicrobial solution that was developed at a university. And the way that this product will be delivered is through garments for healthcare workers and also for the hospitals themselves via lab coats, hospital scrubs, T-shirts, and as well as bedding. So that is, and those items were all identified through some primary market research and speaking with all of those constituents. Next step, please. Thank you. Okay, so yeah, as I just mentioned, we spent a considerable amount of time surveying the market and in particular the target groups. The primary and we identified the customers and users as both the clinicians and the hospitals themselves as the customers and users. So that they all shared a common goal, and their job that they were trying to accomplish was preventing the spread of bacteria as much as possible. So some of the challenges that they experienced were they do another alternative is radiation-based sanitizer equipment. Those are incredibly expensive. And hand washing, I mean, that's something that's stressed among all care providers. It takes time. It's very difficult to manage. So and what do they want to get out of it? Well, I mean, they wanted peace of mind that they were doing as much as they could to prevent infection, but they also wanted it to be convenient and not interfere with their normal workflow. So what I did on the right is like I showed how severe these pains were and relative to one another, as well as how necessary the gains were relative to one another, in order to help inform how the value proposition would be established. Next slide, please. So for the competitive landscape, I just mentioned the radiation sanitizer systems, and there's also other chemicals that could be used to treat textiles and impart antimicrobial properties. I found a lot of secondary market data. There's a number of market research reports, so I was able to show that there was some early, like this I think I went through this maybe 6 years ago, 5 years ago, in fact, and so it was more of a nascent market back then, but there was already some level of penetration that I could see, and really there was these solutions were not adequately addressing the problem, because there was, I mean, some of the chemicals that were being used in other treatments had toxic effects that they were to the touch, but or also to in the wastewater treatment, as they were laundered, and then also the incredibly costly for the radiation sanitizer devices. So going down on the slide here, I had a good sense of who the target groups were, and that was the healthcare workers. So that was not just doctors, but nurses as well, and they wanted to be safe themselves, but they also wanted to maintain a convenience in in improving how they were able to deliver care. And the hospitals, I mean, they were very bottom line driven. They wanted to reduce their infection rates, make sure that they were not responsible for any costs associated with preventable infection. So that's really what benefits they were seeking. So what I was able to do was as I was trying to learn more about these target groups, that a good indicator was they were interested in collaborating with us on testing out these products to get some field data to show that this could actually be used in a real live setting. Prior to that, I mean, we just had some showings of efficacy and some lab studies with bacterial kill rates that were above 99.99%. So so that showed us that we're really onto something. Next slide, please. So from an innovation standpoint, I mean, there was two attributes that represented competitive advantages for us. First, there was we were going to exploit a regulatory exemption to reduce, which would keep the cost of development low, since we were using a plant-based chemical that was actually exempt from for textile treatments as a pesticide. So yeah, pretty interesting. It's actually EPA regulated because anything that is considered a pesticide is regulated by the EPA. And then, but also, I mean, we had some market differentiation because since we were using a natural biocide, there was a better safety profile, and also it was environmentally friendly. So from a patent standpoint, so especially with my background with the patent office, that was something that I wanted to look at right away. I did an IP landscape review. I actually did retain some outside counsel to help me with just on a limited basis. And I mean, we didn't see any art that was blocking our path. This combination of chemicals that we were looking at had not really been used as for this application before. So it was pretty wide open from a freedom to operate standpoint. And also there was no prior art or references where we're turning up that would preclude the patentability, like from a novelty standpoint. So it was checking out, and we definitely thought that there was a path forward with to be able to secure some intellectual property protection. Next slide, please. All right, so finally, there was in terms of the credibility for funding, there was a number of prospective licensees that had expressed interest, and I mean, this was really something that the university, they were fielding those conversations, but it was just too early for them, and they were going to need more data to convince them beyond what had been shown in the lab, and also they were typically looking for products that had already gotten regulatory clearance, and it just turned out that the cost structure for going through the set of tests with EPA and the various administrative fees was a lot lower for a small business than for a large enterprise. So there was there was an economic driver there as well, and so from the industry side, we were able to drum up interest. That it was a pretty uniform desire to see if how these would perform in a field application, something where there was some exposure to some risky bacteria species. So like there was some suggestion for like a wound healing clinic. So that's really what we started to design and go to prospective collaborators with. And the nice thing was those collaborators, they represented our customer base. So hospital systems, even some of the clinicians themselves, and some that were like kind of well recognized as infectious disease prevention experts. They having them collaborate really like showed some engagement with our customer base. So and then also just like the fact that we applied to the NSET 2 demo day. I think it was back in 2013, and we were accepted to present. And not just that, but we garnered some significant interest from a number of the corporate participants that were at the demo day, and even like in the lead up at the event itself and afterwards. So that was really useful. And what that did was that helped to guide the development of the scope of work that was being pitched for funding, and there was a number of targets from the fundraising side that seemed to be accessible. So there's economic development investor type funding. So think seed to angel stage venture type funding, but that's administered through an economic development agency in the Southeast Philadelphia region, as well as SBIR opportunities. We submitted a couple grants through a couple different agencies, and then also pitching to angels, and we had a pretty well defined plan. So and that was key. It was once we started to we weren't just asking for money, but we were asking for money to do X, Y, and Z, and this is what we were going to know with that, and then we'd be able to do 1, 2, and 3, and be able to then be on the path to market. So next slide, please. So this is pretty much the wrap up here. So just with the 4 elements that I just discussed, and then how do you know that you've been able to complete the activities that go along with that. So making sure that your solution fits with the problem in the marketplace to represent your value proposition. Having potential customers respond to a call to action, or being able to demonstrate an unmet need to show market demand. Being able to install a management team or at least a capable business lead that shows that you do have some competitive advantage, and then being able to have a viable plan in place, and to give you confidence that you'll be able to secure the funding that you need. So that is that's pretty much it. The next slide has my contact information, so I'm definitely happy to take questions, or I'm sure Tony or Ria can take questions about the information that they gave. So yeah, again, I'm Adam Greenspan. I live in the Philadelphia area. I do travel up and down the East Coast a bit, but yeah, I'm always happy to just to provide some insight or advice and help out any way I can. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Adam. And if you want to get in touch with Adam as part of the SDO program, you can contact us at nsit2.org. I added a link of the of all our SDOs to the chat box. So if you haven't checked that out, just click on the link so you can see, like, aside from Adam, who else is in our roster of startup development officers that are willing to work with universities, with startups, and with entrepreneurs and faculty to help develop IP and startups. All right, so let's go to Q&A. Our first question is, how much time should a startup spend doing market validation, and how does that get paid? So Adam or Tony, do you want to take this question?
I can jump in. What was the second part of the question? How does that get paid? Is that what you said?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. All right. I'm gonna give abstract answers to this. So, how much time should it take? In my experience, it's really an ongoing process. With respect to kind of the doing it like to justify the decision to proceed with the new venture. I mean, I think some of these activities can be done within, like, I mean, it depends on how much like time that people are committing on a regular basis. But I mean, a month to 3 months, I would estimate. How is it paid? It depends on who's involved. But yeah, usually it's if there's no money, it's sweat equity. So it's going to mainly be driven by the founders. If there's some advisory types, and they could be compensated with some upside in the venture. And I mean, I think that's probably the way to go. I mean, there's some programs out there. I mean, if you get into like a innovation program at a university, I mean, there might be some other timetables, or that might fit into the process. It might there might be some resources there that are part of it. But yeah, just generally, I mean, it's 1 to 3 months for that set of activities, and a piece of the upside.
Yeah, I don't have much to add to that. I thought that was a good answer. So.
All right. So our next question is, I've read about the SBIR program. Does the SBIR program provide funding for market validation?
You want me to say a few words? I'll start. I don't think it does. I think the SBIR program has really dedicated tasks, and marketing, getting patents, doing some other administrative work is really not part of the SBIR. If I remember correctly, it's mostly specific, tasks that move the science forward. Adam, do you have anything more to add to that?
A little bit. So, there might be some ability to get to budget for market validation in the lead up to market launch. So like in phase 2, because that is very commercialization focused. So there might be some ability to budget that, but it would be with respect to launching a particular product or service being developed as a result of the R&D. So I mean, the SBIR, I mean, it's still an R&D program. But what they've done is, I mean, they have tried to address it. I know through with NSF, and I think now with NIH, they do offer ICOR, and I think that's alongside the SBIR award. And then there's also there's you can get a commercialization report done by a consulting group. I don't know if I think the awardee might have to pay for that. I don't know how that works, but there's a consulting group that they do like market assessments that does hit on a lot of these elements, and I think that's like an optional inclusion and that's usually like in between, like once the phase 1 award is nearing and the company is starting to think about their phase 2 application, and the idea would be to prepare them for that commercial activity.
Yeah, and I think for that kind of funding, actually the best place traditionally is universities, and some state agencies help you with that market validation work. All right, next question.
All right, our next question is, could you recommend specific ways to calculate potential market size, value, or milestone payment values of an idea for a product or service? My work is principally in preclinical drug development, and I see all kinds of crazy numbers for early stage drug candidates. Furthermore, using existing deal sheets from the sector can be misleading if they themselves have been inflated or exaggerated due to speculation interests.
Yeah, let me start here, because I think our corporate selection process actually addresses this really well. So they'll give you feedback on particulars as to how they see the market, how they see the market size, the value. So that market validation from the IPO and corporate M&A point of view is really what the corporate selection committee does on the IP and startups submitted to the program. Adam?
Yeah, so I don't have a ton to add. For the purposes that I was referring to, it's not so much of making it like a precise calculation, but really just to show that there is a market. But yeah, I think that there's proprietary databases where this information is accessible, but there's a cost to subscribe to those. So yeah, that's almost like its own consulting project. But I don't know that it's probably once you start pitching investors, that's where those questions come in about what is the actual market opportunity and the address. In terms of the addressable market, I thought I saw that. Did I? Maybe I didn't see that in there. One way to look at it is if you're able to distill down to like a cost per user or cost per customer, and then and if you're able to get some intelligence on what's the estimated number of total people or total users, then that could give an indication.
All right. I think we have time for one more question. So here's the question. How do you protect the team and researcher when market validation established from attacks that the team is less credible to do work themselves, but need to only sell or license it to corporates, which usually shelves it?
Well, let me take a stab at it. At the end of all of this, no matter what the market and the research tells you, I think most success that I've seen actually comes just from the passion of the team. So the team wants to move something forward, and they listen and they take they take it all in, but they have a goal to do something in the world, dent the universe, as Steve Jobs used to say, and they just kind of find a way to do that. Usually in the literature it's called pivoting, right? So you start off with a plan and you're going to do something and you get market feedback and you pivot to do it in a different way but really achieve the same goal. So I would answer this with the caution that really what drives this is the passion of the team and the passion of the team to do something important. If you have a taxi, weather them. Always listen to what people are saying, especially smart people. But at the end of the day, so many things got done that people thought would not be, something anybody would want or anybody would care about. Because until they actually see the product and can play with it and understand it, especially if it's a new thing in the world, it's really hard to get that kind of market validation. So I would use it more as a gut check. But at the end of the day, if you don't have the passion, if they're telling you to do something, you don't have the passion, it's not going to work. And if they're telling you not to do it and you have the passion, you'll find a way to achieve what you're trying to achieve, even if it's in a different form. Adam?
Yeah, I agree. I wouldn't be discouraged by that, but I would certainly try to clarify that and learn why that's being shared that way, and because it might just be a matter of onboarding another team member or another resource to alleviate that problem or that perception. But yeah, if there's another way is, if there's an opportunity to out-license or sell, maybe there's also an opportunity to include a clawback provision where if that partner does shelve it and doesn't do anything with it, then there's the ability to get it back.
Okay, all right. That's all the time we have today for the questions. I'd like to thank Tony and Adam for joining us this afternoon. Adam, thank you very much for doing the presentation. And
Pleasure.
hopefully our audience today enjoyed themselves and learned a lot on this topic. So just as a reminder, we are recording this webinar, and the slides as well as the video will be available within 24 to 48 hours after the webinar concludes. You will receive an email from us saying where to download the slides and where to view the video. So our next webinar is next week. It's collaborating with corporate partners. So we are looking forward to seeing everyone there again. And hopefully you enjoyed that webinar as well. So again, thank you, Tony. Thank you, Adam, for joining us today. And thank you for our audience. And have a good afternoon.
Thank you, Ria. Thank you, Adam. Everyone, thank you for spending the time. Enjoy the rest of the day.